Welcome to Twilight Fables, where classic tales are bound in shadow. Tonight we begin our descent into the icy grip of the Snow Queen. In this world, innocence melts under frostbitten lies, and even the purest love can freeze to death in a withered village cradled between wolf-thick woods and the iron teeth of the northern mountains. The wind did not blow, it scraped, it screeched like rusted nails down a coffin lid. The people of Elivos, too small and too forgotten to appear on any proper map, had long ago stopped naming their seasons. Here it was winter, and then worse winter. It was always snowing, even when the sky was clear. At the edge of this village, in a gabled house, sagging beneath frost-laden beams, lived a boy named Kai and a girl named Gerda. They were not siblings, but they might as well have been. Born days apart, they had suckled from the same wet nurse, cut their teeth on the same wooden toys, and now, at 15, shared a window seat to stare out at the same sorrowful world. The townspeople said they were bound by more than friendship. They said Gerda would die for Kai, and Kai for her, but they did not say what would happen if one of them stopped being themselves. The house belonged to Gerda's grandmother, a candle maker with trembling hands and eyes clouded white from decades spent near open flame. She told stories, always stories. Some were sweet, but most were bitter as the wind. Her favourite was about the Snow Queen. She rides on the northern winds, she whispered one evening, her voice as thin as thread. Her sleigh glides on silver runners, drawn by white elk with bleeding eyes. When she kisses you, it's like falling asleep, but you never wake up, not properly. And if you see her face, really see it, she will carve a place for herself in your heart. Kay had scoffed. That's just something you say to keep us from wandering into the mountains. But Gerda had stayed silent, her gaze fixed on the flickering candle between them, as though it danced with shapes only she could see. What neither child knew was that high above them, past the frozen pines and blizzard-wreathed peaks, a mirror had shattered. It had once belonged to something old, not a witch or god, but a being of mischief and hate, who crafted a looking-glass that revealed only what was ugly, base, and cruel. It was meant to show the world as it truly was. That mirror, once whole, had cracked in a storm of spite, the shards scattered across the earth, some no bigger than a snowflake, others sharp enough to cleave bone. One fell into Kay's eye. It happened in the garden. He and Gerda were trimming the last of the withered rose bushes, digging out roots from the frost-stiff soil. Kay had brushed snow from a budless stalk when he cried out, "Something flew in my eye!" Gerda rushed over. His eye watered, and he blinked furiously, but there was nothing there. "Maybe it was dust," she offered, concerned, but that Kay changed. Not all at once, not in a way that screamed, but like a pond freezing over. He was colder, not to touch, but in presence. He no longer laughed when Gerda slipped on the snow. He didn't help the village boys carve sleds or kiss Gerda on the cheek when she brought him hot bread. He began staring at things, people, buildings, even her, with quiet contempt, as if a secret ugliness in them had been revealed. By the second week, he had stopped visiting the candle shop entirely. By the third, he spoke only to mock. "You smell like tallow and ash," he told Gerda one morning. "Why don't you wash your hair?" Gerda, stunned, had touched her braid. "Kay, what's wrong?" He smirked. "You're just not as pretty as you think you are." Those words burned more than any winter wind, but it was his eyes that hurt the most. His right eye, still soft and brown, held a trace of the old Kay, but the left, the one that had watered in the garden, looked glazed over, like a marble left in ice. It did not blink right. It did not cry. It saw things that weren't there, and worse, it saw things that were. One night, he vanished. He had taken his sled, his scarf, and a single candle. Gerda searched the whole village, knocking on doors, sobbing into her frozen mittens, begging the boys who lived by the creek if they had seen him. They hadn't, but something else had. Old Mira, who lived in the woods with her cats and kept bottles of strange oil, said she saw Kay in the sky. "Not like a bird," she wheezed, "like a shadow riding wind. He passed over my roof, silent as fog, and on his sled, my gods, there were antlers, long as spears." The villagers muttered about fever dreams, but Gerda believed her, because that same night the snow stopped falling. The clouds parted to reveal stars that flickered with icy blue light, and on the roof above the candle shop, frost had formed a perfect silhouette, a boy kneeling in a sleigh, face turned skyward, lips blue with a frozen smile. Gerda packed that morning. She brought what she could: a flask of melted snow, her grandmother's scissors, a tattered map with no names, and a white rose. It had bloomed once, before the snow became permanent. She kept it wrapped in wax paper, a reminder of warmth. She didn't say goodbye. The snow was deeper outside the village, curling like sleeping beasts across the trail. The forest looked hungrier than she remembered, branches sagging with ice that clinked like teeth. Crows did not call, they watched. Gerda followed nothing but a feeling. She walked by day, curled in hollows by night, her flask emptied, her fingers blistered from cold. Once she awoke to find her boots missing, and a trail of bare footprints circling her. Too small to be human, but still she went on. It was on the 5th day that she met the river woman. The stream had frozen from bank to bank, but she followed it, believing it might lead her to higher ground. She came to a bend where reeds jutted from the ice like spears, and there, Huddled in a nest of animal bones and tattered cloth sat the woman. She wore a crown of fish skulls. Her eyes were yellow and wide set, and her arms were too long. Her mouth never moved when she spoke. "Looking for the boy," she hissed. "The cold one. He has been taken." "By the Snow Queen?" Gerda asked. The woman tilted her head. "Or he followed her. It is hard to know the difference." "Do you know where she went?" "She dwells where the world ends, where ice grows from the ground like glass. But not all can reach her, only those who know pain." "I know pain," Gerda whispered. The river woman crawled forward. Her limbs made no sound on the ice. "Then give me a memory, a warm one, a bright one, and I will tell you where to go." Gerda blinked. A memory? A trade? A toll? Gerda closed her eyes. She thought of Kay at age 7, when he had plucked a wild lily and woven it into her braid. He had told her she looked like a princess, and she'd blushed so deeply she'd hidden her face for an hour. She gave the memory away. It left her chest like breath in winter. The pain was immediate, like a cracked tooth or a stubbed toe that never quite healed. The woman smiled. "Go north. When the trees begin to weep, you are close." And then she vanished. Gerda pressed forward. Her heart ached, but the memory was gone, and its absence gave her strength. Days passed. She saw strange things. A reindeer with no eyes, crying blood into the snow. A girl in red who offered her a cloak sewn from tongues. A hunter made of branches and deer antlers who watched her from the hilltops but never stepped forward. She reached a glade where the trees bled sap that steamed in the cold. They wept, as the woman had said. The trunks bore faces, twisted, screaming, frozen mid-sob. No wind blew, and no bird sang. The world grew quieter with every step. At the centre of the glade, Gerda found a mirror. It was half buried in frost and moss, its frame iron-wrought and thorned. Her breath caught. In it, she saw herself, but thinner, paler, her eyes sunken, her lips blue. The version of her in the mirror whispered, though its mouth never moved, "He is not yours any more." Gerda smashed the mirror with her grandmother's scissors. She didn't stop until her hands bled. As the shards scattered, the snow around her shifted. A path opened, a slope of white that led straight into the mountain's maw, where ice grew in spirals and the air shimmered with frost magic. A sleigh track wound through the snow, fresh and deep. Gerda stepped onto it, and the air changed. It was colder, colder than death, colder than hate. And far ahead, atop the next rise, silhouetted by the aurora's sickly light, a figure stood, tall, thin, draped in robes like glass curtains, and behind her, bound to her sleigh with cords of ice, Kay, smiling. The figure did not move. The Snow Queen stood motionless against the bleeding aurora, her silhouette glass-like and shimmerless. Gerda's feet sank into the path of the sleigh tracks. the snow beneath strangely warm, as if recently disturbed by something that did not walk but glided. She dared not call Kay's name, not yet. What if he turned and his smile wasn't for her? What if the thing beside the Queen was just wearing his skin? Still, she walked. Each step cracked through frozen crust, echoing in the void around her. There were no birds here, no wind, not even her breath curled into the air. It felt as though the world had entered a moment of held breath, and everything was waiting to exhale. As she climbed the hill, the Queen turned. Her face was wrong, not in the grotesque way of monsters or the snarling deformities Gerda had imagined in her grandmother's tales, but in its stillness. Her beauty was perfectly balanced, lips not too full, eyes not too wide, cheekbones carved like icicles, but none of it moved. It was as if her face had been moulded, not born, and her eyes, those eyes were deeper than the sky, whiter than the sun, and yet empty, so profoundly empty. She raised one hand. Kay turned his head toward Gerda. He looked just as she remembered. No, not quite. His skin bore a glassy sheen, like porcelain left too long in frost. The smile on his face pulled too tightly at the corners, cracking faint lines beneath his eyes. His left eye, the one that had watered in the garden, was entirely white now, glinting like a chip of mirror beneath ice. "Gerda," he said, voice muffled, as if coming through water. She ran. She didn't think, didn't breathe, didn't stop. She ran straight for him, across the white slope, through knee-high snow, her fingers outstretched. He didn't move. The Queen lowered her hand, and the world broke. The ground beneath Gerda crumbled with a brittle snap. She fell, not down, but through, like diving into a cracked mirror. The air vanished, replaced by silence and pressure, and a ringing so high-pitched it made her teeth ache. She hit the floor with a thud. Snowflakes still danced in the air, but they moved unnaturally, jerking and stuttering like puppets. She stood, dizzy, and found herself inside a chamber. No, a palace, carved entirely from glass. Not ice, glass. The walls shimmered, refracting infinite versions of herself, stumbling, crying, reaching. The reflections moved a second too late, eyes twitching in the wrong direction. The floor was slick, patterned in runes she could not read, and the ceiling was an endless dome of white, from which sharp icicles hung like teeth. Gerda took a shaky breath, then another. The Queen's voice slid in like a draft beneath a locked door. "You came too soon." It came from everywhere and nowhere. Gerda spun. "You should have frozen on the mountain," the Queen murmured, "or traded away more of yourself. You are not ready." "Give me back Kay," Gerda shouted, her voice bouncing off the glass. A pause, then laughter, quiet, silver laughter like breaking crystal. "I have not taken him," said the Queen. "He was smiling Yes, he is happy now. He is not, Gerda growled. You don't know what happiness is, the Queen said softly. Not really. You know warmth, comfort, but happiness, true, lasting happiness, can only exist in stillness, in silence, in perfection. A figure stepped out from a glass wall, the Snow Queen again, but smaller, younger, her face unchanged, but her eyes wider, brighter. Gerda stumbled back. It is beginning, the Queen whispered. Another figure stepped out from the opposite wall. Gerda, but not as she was now. This Gerda wore black furs, her hair unbraided, eyes sunken with grief. She had blood on her hands. She looked at Gerda with disdain. Who are you? Gerda asked. You, said the Queen, a version that mourns, a version that survives, but I can give you better. The floor shifted. A third Gerda rose from it, this one radiant, her hair glowing gold, cheeks flushed with life. Kay stood beside her, hand in hers, both smiling with glassy eyes. Their movements were synchronized, puppet-like. This is what you want, said the Queen, to be with him forever, without change, without loss, no more death, no more grief, only beauty, only peace. Gerda reached for Kay again, but her hand passed through him. An illusion. The Queen appeared before her, and this time Gerda could see what lay beneath her face. Cracks, hairline fractures along her cheeks, her forehead, her jaw. Beneath the surface shimmered something hollow. Her beauty was a mask, a glaze overwrought. You were a girl once, Gerda whispered. The Queen tilted her head. No, I was a shard, a sliver, a piece broken from something old. I lived in a mirror of cruelty and was freed when it shattered. Now I offer sanctuary, a palace of frozen peace where no one must feel again. I don't want peace, Gerda said, trembling. I want Kay. The Queen smiled. He doesn't want you. She raised a hand and the floor turned to water. Cold, black. Gerda fell through. This time there was no bottom. She awoke, gasping, on stone. The glass palace was gone. Around her stood pillars of ice, tall as towers, stretching into a skyless void. Above, stars hung in coils, forming eyes that blinked once every minute. A voice rasped beside her. She nearly kept you. Gerda turned sharply. It was a reindeer, but no ordinary one. Its antlers were charred black, twisted like roots, and its eyes glowed with flame. You followed her too far, it said. Am I dead? Gerda whispered. Not yet, but close. Kay, where is he? The reindeer shook its head. He is where the Queen wants him, somewhere colder than this. Can you take me to him? I can take you part of the way, but the rest you must walk. She climbed onto its back. Fingers clutched in its fur. The ride was silent. Around them, frozen statues of travellers stood mid-step. Men and women and children, all caught by time, some had looks of terror, others were smiling, wide and empty. They gave up, the reindeer said. They believed her lies. The path curved downward into a spiral of ice that pulsed like a heartbeat. Gerda saw images etched in the walls. Kay, staring at her with disdain. Kay, walking into the Queen's arms. Kay, smashing the rose she had given him. Gerda, alone, old, eyes empty. These are not truths, she whispered. They are possibilities, said the reindeer, but the Queen wants you to believe them. Why? Because if you stop believing in him, she wins. The reindeer stopped at a black gate made of frost flesh and metal. Beyond it, silence throbbed. I cannot go further, it said. Why? Because this is the realm of your making. Even my bones would not survive. Gerda climbed down. Her feet sank into snow that crunched like glass. The gate opened. She entered. Inside was no castle, no throne, just a room, square, windowless, lined with mirrors, real ones this time, not enchanted, not cursed, just reflections. And in the centre, Kay, sitting on a stool. His skin was pale. His eyes, both of them, were white now. In his hands, he held pieces of something, turning them over and over. A puzzle made of mirror shards. Kay, she breathed. He didn't respond. Kay, it's me. It's Gerda. No answer. She stepped closer. His lips moved, but no sound came. He was repeating something, silently, over and over. She knelt before him. The shards in his hands were cutting into his fingers, but he didn't bleed. They have to fit, he muttered suddenly. They have to fit. They have to fit. Kay, stop. I have to make the word, he said. What word? The word that makes sense. The word that fixes it. That makes the pain go away. That makes me forget. He dropped a shard. Gerda picked it up. In it, she saw herself, crying, alone. Kay, she lied to you. There's no word that makes it go away. Only love, only memory, only me. He blinked, one eye, the left. A tear slid down, a real tear. She reached for him, and this time he reached back. The Queen screamed. The mirrors shattered. Gerda pulled Kay into her arms as the palace cracked, as the void screamed, as frost peeled from the world like old skin. Her kiss was warm, so warm. When they awoke, they were lying in the candle shop beside the fireplace. Gerda blinked. Kay groaned, holding his head. What happened? You're home, she whispered, wrapping her arms around him. Outside, the snow had stopped, and the frost on the windows formed the faintest outline of a face, watching, waiting. The village of Elivos had not seen a thaw in 27 years. It had endured snows that never stopped falling, frost that crept into bones and dreams, and ice so thick it cracked stone walls like brittle bark. Children were born into winter and grew old without knowing another season. Fires were not just warmth, they were a religion, a defence against something more than cold. And yet, when Gerda and Kai awoke, curled on the soot-dusted floor of the candle shop, the windows were weeping. Rivulets of water traced long, thin fingers across the glass, dripping down like tears. Outside, slush puddled in the streets. The icicles that once dripped from rooftops, like daggers, had broken off, lying shattered on the cobblestones, like a disarmed army. Kai opened his eyes slowly. Gerda had already sat up. She hadn't slept since they collapsed. Couldn't. Sleep felt like an invitation, and though the Queen was gone, her silence still lingered in the corners of the room, in the shadows cast by the fireplace, in the way the candle flames refused to flicker. Kai groaned. His hair was damp, his face pale, but both his eyes were brown again. "Gerda," he rasped. She turned to him instantly, cupping his face in her palms, searching. "It's you," she whispered. "It's really you." He nodded slowly, then paused. I remember pieces. A sleigh, the snow. I remember something pulling me, a voice in my ear, telling me I was broken. "You were," Gerda said softly, "but not anymore." He blinked, looking around the room. "Why is it warm?" he asked. Gerda had no answer, because the warmth didn't feel right. The villagers emerged from their homes in stunned silence. Children stood barefoot in puddles. Old men blinked up at the sun as if it were a myth they'd only ever heard about. Roofs dripped, trees cracked. Somewhere a bird sang, a thin, reedy trill, like a flute left in the snow too long. But no one smiled, because this was not a spring of joy. It felt wrong, like the earth had been stitched together with the wrong thread. The sun was too pale, the water too clear, the sky empty. A priest rang the chapel bell in warning, and 3 hours later he was found frozen solid in the belfry. His mouth was open in a scream. His eyes were glass, but the ropes were still warm. The thaw had come, but it had brought no safety, only change. Gerda and Kai watched from the attic window of the candle shop. Grandmother was gone, her body buried in the snow, long before Gerda's return, and the house felt hollow without her, but it offered shelter, and the scent of tallow still clung to the beams, like a memory that refused to fade. "Do you remember the Queen?" Gerda asked that night, as they lay wrapped in furs. Kai was silent for a long time. "She was beautiful," he said finally, "but not real, like a statue someone tried to make of an angel, but forgot to give it a soul. She told me if I solved her puzzle, everything would stop hurting, and for a while, it didn't." Gerda nodded. "She wanted you to forget me. She almost won." He turned to face her. "I'm scared, Gerda." "Of her?" "No, of what's left behind." She didn't understand until morning. The dead began to weep. It started with Mira, the old woman who lived on the edge of the woods. She had died the year before, teeth gnawed down to stubs, eyes gone cloudy. Her son buried her beneath the frost beside the creek, but when he passed the spot days after the thaw, he found her grave disturbed, not dug up, melted. The soil steamed, her bones lay scattered, and her skull bore marks, scratches, deep ones, as if something had tried to claw out. More graves followed, whole sections of the cemetery buckled, the earth turning soft and black. Mourners claimed to hear whispers rising from below, soft at first, then louder, names being called, secrets being recited. And in the candle shop, Kay began to speak in his sleep, not words, numbers. Gerda wrote them down every morning. 713, 42, 9931 to 713. They repeated, looped, echoed. She recognised the first one. It was the number etched into one of the mirror shards from the Queen's palace. On the 7th day, after the thaw, the snow fell again, but it was not white. It came down black, thin ash flakes drifting from a sky that refused to lighten. The villagers gathered in the square, staring upward as the snow fell and clung to their skin like soot. It melted nothing, it burned nothing, it simply was. Someone screamed. Their skin had started to peel where the snow landed. By nightfall, 10 people were dead. Kay stood at the window, watching it all. I think it followed us, he said. Gerda's throat went dry. The Queen? No. What she served. The thing that made the mirror. The thing that cracked it. Gerda stared. You never told me there was something else. She never spoke its name, but sometimes, when she slept, it whispered through the walls. Gerda didn't dare ask what it said. Instead, she flipped through the notebook where she'd been keeping the numbers. She matched them to letters, tried ciphering them against the names of stars, herbs, even the village's graves. Only one line made sense. 713, K, 42 the eye, 99931 unmaking, to her, 713, K. It read like a command. K, the eye, unmaking, her, K. A loop, a ritual. Something was unfinished. That night, Gerda awoke to find Kay gone, again. His boots were missing, the door ajar. She ran barefoot into the black snow. It did not burn her. Instead, it moved away, fluttering sideways, avoiding her skin, as if she carried something it feared. She followed the footprints to the graveyard. Kay stood before an open pit. In it lay a mirror, not broken, not cursed, just a mirror, oval and smooth, set in the soil like a door to another world. Kay turned to her. I think I left something behind. Gerda reached for him. Kay, please. She didn't take me, he whispered. I went. I chose it. I was tired of hurting. I was tired of feeling like nothing mattered. You came back. I don't know if that was right. You were hurting. That's not weakness. It's just life. Kay turned his head, staring down at the mirror. I think she's still waiting in there. Gerda looked. At first, she saw only her reflection, haunted, thin, exhausted. Then she blinked. The Queen was there, smiling from the other side of the glass. But this time she looked worse. Her face was cracking, deep fractures splitting her cheeks and forehead. Her mouth hung too wide. Her eyes were black holes, dripping mirror shards. She mouthed a single word, "Come." Gerda pulled Kay back, but his feet didn't move. He was crying now. I think part of me is still with her. If I leave it there, she'll never die. Gerda stepped forward. Then let's go take it back. The grave swallowed them both, not in the way earth swallows the dead, not with weight, soil and silence, but with lightless descent. Gerda clutched Kay's hand as they passed through the oval of glass. Lying at the bottom of the disturbed grave, it did not ripple, it did not shatter, it simply accepted them. And the instant they passed through, the world forgot they existed. Above, the village of Elivos continued to melt. The black snow turned to oily rain. Children forgot the names of their siblings. Mothers wept over empty cradles, uncertain whether they had ever been full. Time itself began to slur, dragging its feet through days that had no dawn, and nights with too many moons. No one remembered Gerda. No one remembered Kay. Only the mirror did, and the thing waiting inside it. There was no colour beyond the glass. Everything shimmered in monochrome, a world made from polished obsidian and molten silver. The sky was a storm of veins, like cracks through smoked ice. The ground beneath their feet felt solid, but when Gerda looked down, she saw nothing but a reflection of herself, staring back, warped, stretched, mouth too wide. Kay stood beside her, but he looked thinner now, not physically, existentially. Pieces of him shimmered like static in a mirror, trying to forget its own image. Kay. She knows I'm here, he whispered. Gerda turned. In the distance, something glided toward them. At first, she thought it was the Queen, but this figure crawled. Her hands were backward, joints bulging in the wrong places. Her face hung slack, like candle wax on a skull. Her body shimmered as though sculpted from the fog of frozen breath, her ribs visible beneath a translucent dress that shifted between silk and bone. She opened her mouth. No sound came, but the air grew colder. She's not the Queen, Kay murmured. She's what's left of her. They didn't run. There was nowhere to run to. The world stretched infinitely in all directions, empty except for pillars of broken glass, jutting like tombstones from the ground. Above, the sky cracked again, spider webbing outward with a sound like whispered arguments. The crawling woman reached them, then stopped. She raised her head, eyes blank as eggshells. From her mouth spilled mirror dust, tiny shards that melted before hitting the ground. She lifted one hand and pointed directly at Kay. I want it back, she rasped. Kay stepped behind Gerda. She stood tall, though her knees shook. "He doesn't belong to you," Gerda said. "You're wrong." The woman's jaw creaked open wider than a human's shoulder. "He is made of me, a piece, a shard." Kay blinked. "She's right." Gerda turned sharply. "I never got it out," he said, touching his left eye. "Not really. It melted. It dissolved. But it stayed. It grew. That's how she followed me. That's why the snow came back." The woman lunged, not at Kay, at Gerda, her arms stretched like wet paper. Her fingers had too many joints. Gerda screamed and flung the only thing she had, a piece of waxed paper from her coat, once used to wrap the last rose. It hit the woman's face and burned. She screamed. The sound twisted the sky. Gerda grabbed Kay's hand and ran. They fled through the ruin fields. The ground cracked beneath them, revealing layers of memories beneath the surface, reflections of things that had happened and things that hadn't. They saw themselves as children, playing beside the frozen creek, then teenagers, kissing beneath the candle shop eaves, then older, unrecognisably older. In one reflection, Gerda stood alone, bald, her skin sagging with time. In another, Kay wore a priest's robe, eyes hollow, whispering sermons to no one in a snow-covered church. "She's trying to distract us," Gerda said. "These aren't real." "She's not trying to scare you," Kay replied. "She's showing me what could have been, who I could have been, and who you still can be." "No," Kay said, "not if the shard is still inside me." They reached a spire of black glass. It jutted like a needle from the ground, humming with low vibrations. Around its base swirled fog, a liquid fog, thick and churning like smoke boiled in tar. At the top, a shape hovered, a mirror, circular, framed in thorns. Gerda didn't hesitate. She climbed. There were no stairs, only ledges, handholds, spiralling ridges cut into the glass by some unknown tool. The climb tore skin from her fingers, but the pain kept her grounded, real. Kay followed. Below them, the crawling woman screamed again, only this time it wasn't in pain. It was delight. Halfway up, Gerda paused to catch her breath. The world below shimmered. She could see the graveyard now, the same one they'd entered from, a glimmering oval of grey, embedded in the ground, barely pulsing. The entrance, it was closing, faster than expected. "Kay," she gasped, pointing. He nodded grimly. "Then we need to be quick." They climbed higher. The air grew sharp, like breathing razors. Kay began to cough, mirror dust, glinting with each breath. His eye, the eye, was bleeding light now, leaking silver tears that hissed when they hit the glass. "She's trying to reclaim me," he said. "No," Gerda said. "We choose. She doesn't own you." At the summit, the mirror hovered in silence. It was not large, no bigger than a dinner plate, but it pulsed like a heart, and its reflection was wrong. It showed nothing, No Gerda, no Kai, only a flat plane of black, with a single glowing shape at the centre, a tiny shard, turning, spinning, sharp. The source, Kay whispered. The first piece, the one that never broke, the one she was born from. Gerda reached for it. The mirror hissed. She ignored it. Her fingers touched the glass. It cut her. Blood splashed onto the surface, and the shard stopped spinning. The mirror screamed. Not the queen, not the woman, the mirror itself. It cracked. A jagged fracture split through its surface. Then another, then another. The mirror imploded, pulling light, sound, and screams inward. Gerda was flung backward. Kay grabbed her before she fell from the spire. Below, the crawling woman collapsed into shards, her body unravelling like paper in fire. The sky shuddered, the veins vanished, and the world broke. They woke in the grave. The glass was gone, the mirror was gone, the black snow had stopped, and the village was gone too, not physically, but spiritually. Elivos stood in ruins. The buildings were intact, but hollow. The people wandered like ghosts, speaking in fractured phrases. The church bells tolled every 6 minutes, but there was no priest. Kay and Gerda stood in the graveyard. No one noticed them. I don't think we ever left, Kay said. Gerda turned. His left eye was normal, brown, alive, but behind him, in the candle shop window, a figure stood, watching. Not the queen, not a woman, a shape of nothing pressed against the glass, and on its chest shimmered a single mirror shard, still turning. Gerda stood frozen beneath the shattered arch of the cathedral, her eyes still adjusting to the dim, cathedral-length corridor of pale ice. The echoes of whispered prayers and gasped confessions hung in the air like smoke in a crypt, clinging to the cold walls that shimmered faintly with trapped souls. She took a step forward, boots scraping frost, and every whisper in the air seemed to hush in anticipation. Light flickered uncertainly from a vaulted ceiling, as if sourced not from sun or moon, but from memories, fragments of joy, grief, and guilt entombed in the ice. A tear welled in Gerda's eye, unbidden. It wasn't hers. It belonged to someone long dead, still mourning through the stones. Kay. Her voice was small, almost reverent. Can you hear me? From the choir loft high above. A long, slow creak answered her. Something was moving. She pressed on. The cathedral's nave split into 2 aisles of frozen pews, lined with mummified congregants, their faces trapped mid-prayer or scream, skin drawn tight like parchment, stretched over bone. Many still clutched rosaries, strings of teeth and ice threaded together in crude devotion. Gerda's breath formed a mist halo around her face as she moved between them. She kept her gaze forward, afraid to meet the eyes of those who once hoped for salvation. Whatever God they had called to had not answered, or worse, it had. At the altar stood a figure in white. Gerda's heart stammered, "Kay, no." This figure was taller, thinner, almost skeletal, beneath a robe of gauzy snow. Its face was featureless, save for a jagged split across where a mouth should be, filled with slowly churning ice. It cocked its head toward her, the way a predator observes something smaller but new. "I've come for Kay," Gerda said, her voice trembling like a reed in wind. The thing did not speak. It raised one hand, long talon-like fingers of icicle and gristle, and pointed behind her. She turned where there had been a gaping entrance to the cathedral. There was now only mirror. Her own reflection stared back, except it wasn't her. Not exactly. The Gerda in the mirror had eyes of hollow silver, and skin pale as death, lips chapped black and cracked into a cold, bitter smile. A voice, low and sonorous, began to rise from the cathedral walls. It wasn't speech, it was liturgical, a hymn, a rite in some forgotten tongue that stretched vowels into bleeding sounds. Gerda turned back to the altar. The robed figure was gone. Now, in its place, knelt Kay. He was dressed in white. He looked up and smiled. The joy in her chest caught like a hook in flesh. For a moment, he was still her Kay, older, thinner perhaps, but still Kay. She ran forward, arms outstretched, but he didn't rise to meet her. He simply extended one hand. When she took it, the cold leapt up her arm like fire. Her breath hitched. His fingers were like glass. "I knew you'd come," he said gently. "I saw you in the ice." Gerda tried to hug him, but his body was rigid, like porcelain waiting to break. "They told me," he said, not meeting her eyes. "They showed me everything, the truth." "What truth?" Kay lifted his other hand and touched her chest, right above her heart. His fingers burned her through the layers of clothing. She winced. "There's something inside you," he said, "and it's waking up." She stepped back. "What are you talking about?" But Kay only smiled, and behind him the altar cracked open like a wound. From within, something slithered out, something long, serpentine, made of shadow and frost. Its head was human, but twisted, weeping blood that froze in the air. Its body coiled through the broken pews and whispered in tongues not meant for ears. Gerda backed away. Kay stood calmly. "It's always been in us," he said. "We're its children." "No, this isn't you, Kay." He blinked slowly. "I'm more me than I've ever been." A hand grabbed Gerda's shoulder. She whirled. It was the girl in the plague mask. But now the mask was shattered, revealing a young woman's face, half burned, half beautiful, eyes white as snow blindness. "You shouldn't have come," the girl said softly. "You'll only wake her up." "Who?" Gerda breathed. "The Queen," she said, "but not the one you think. The real Snow Queen isn't a woman. She's an idea, a parasite of grief." She pointed to the mirror at the entrance. Gerda's reflection no longer mirrored her. It stared at her hungrily, lips twitching. "You brought her with you," the girl whispered. Suddenly the floor cracked beneath Gerda's feet. A burst of white hands clawed up from below. Too many fingers, too many wrists, all grasping for purchase. The cathedral trembled. Kay didn't move. "Run!" the girl hissed, grabbing Gerda's hand and yanking her sideways through a side door that hadn't existed moments ago. They crashed into a stairwell carved from compacted snow, spiralling downward into darkness. The screams of the cathedral grew muffled, then silent. Only their breath remained. They descended until Gerda's legs burned, until her lips turned blue. The girl in front of her, still nameless, moved with mechanical certainty. Finally, the staircase ended in a small, circular chamber lit by hundreds of tiny candles, each floating mid-air without heat or flame. In the centre sat a cracked mirror, surrounded by dolls with missing eyes. The girl turned to Gerda. Her voice, when it came, was no longer soft. "You've been infected." Gerda opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "Everyone who sees the Queen carries a piece of her," the girl continued. "You must purge it, or it will replace you." Gerda found her voice, rough and unsure. "Why are you helping me?" The girl didn't answer right away. Her burned cheek twitched slightly. "Because I didn't have anyone, and I don't want you to end like me." She reached into her sleeve and pulled out a small blade made of frozen ash. It pulsed faintly with a red glow. "Hold still." "No," Gerda said. "What are you?" But the girl moved fast. The blade pricked Gerda's chest, just below her heart, and everything stopped. She couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. From her body, a shadow lifted, like smoke peeling from flesh. It took form in front of them, a figure that looked exactly like Gerda, but hollow-eyed, mouthless, its limbs too long. It hovered, twitching. "That's her," the girl said. The infection. The hollow Gerda floated forward, hands reaching. The girl threw the blade. It pierced the doppelganger's forehead. For a second, it shimmered, then exploded into a mist of snow and ash. Gerda collapsed. When she woke, the girl was gone. A scrap of paper lay in her hand. A single line was written in red. "Don't follow the lights. Follow what doesn't want to be found." Gerda stood slowly. Her skin ached. Her breath no longer fogged. She was alone in the chamber now, and the candles were flickering out, one by one, as if exhaling with her. A door revealed itself in the ice. She stepped through it and found herself in a field of glass flowers, under a black sky that pulsed with veins of silver. Each flower hummed a different sound, songs of grief, lullabies to things that never woke. In the distance, a figure moved, not Kay, Not the girl, something taller, wrapped in rags that trailed behind it like smoke. It didn't walk, it slid. Gerda followed the one path that didn't sing. The silence led her toward the beating heart of winter, and whatever wore the name Queen, Gerda stood at the threshold of a new world. Gone were the dense forests of chittering teeth and whispering bark, the rotting cottages, and the black lichen-covered wolves. Here, the landscape was vast, empty, a world frozen in stillness, so complete it hummed. A barren white tundra stretched outward in all directions, like a sea of powdered glass. In the distance, the towers of the Snow Queen's palace shimmered like brittle spires of salt, too fragile to exist, and yet they loomed, unshakable, immortal. Gerda's lips were split from the wind, her cheeks bled through cracked skin, her boots were torn open and soaked through, but she kept walking, numb, each step leaving behind a shallow imprint that filled with frost before she could take another. Above her, the sky rippled in colours she'd never seen before, not the vibrant ribbons of the northern lights, but thin slashes of bone-coloured light, as if something behind the heavens was bleeding into the world. Somewhere inside that palace, Kay waited, but she didn't know if he was still human. The last trial had shown her things she wished she could burn from her memory. Her grandmother's corpse swinging from a silver chain of ice, the hollow-eyed corpse of the robber girl, whispering secrets in a tongue only the dead knew, the mirror shard buried inside her own eye, glowing faintly like an ember. She touched her cheek now. The shard had not left. It vibrated sometimes, as if calling to something buried beneath the ice. She feared it was calling to him. The gates of the palace rose from the ground like two frozen wings, each carved with faces, hundreds, all screaming silently. The metal bars pulsed beneath a thick layer of frost, as though something inside still lived and breathed. As Gerda approached, the gate groaned open on its own. No guards, no resistance. The palace welcomed her. Inside, the silence was worse. The air didn't move. Her breath didn't cloud. Her footsteps didn't echo. Every hallway was lined with enormous mirrors, yet none showed her reflection. Instead, they showed images from her past, but twisted, rotted. Her grandmother lying in a bed of worms, her home drowned in ash, a younger version of herself strangling Kay while smiling. She turned away from each. "This is how the Snow Queen wins," she whispered to herself, not with force, with doubt. She reached the first chamber. It was shaped like a vast amphitheatre, made of frozen glass. At its centre stood a pile of snow shaped like a throne, and seated upon it was a figure in furs and bone. Not the Snow Queen, a man, at least, something that had once been one. His face was skeletal, his lips drawn back to expose blackened gums, and his eyes had long since melted into two frozen hollows, yet he turned when she entered, as if he had been waiting. His breath wheezed like a collapsing lung. "You are late," he said, voice cracked and layered, like a chorus of ghosts, speaking in unison. Gerda didn't answer. "You are Gerda, the last soul who remembers warmth. You should not have come. I'm here for Kay." The Hollow King tilted his head. "There is no Kay here, only shards. One for each lie he told, one for each smile he gave you that he didn't mean. You're lying. I do not lie. That is your curse, child of summer. You see hope where there is none." He rose. His spine creaked like frozen timber. Gerda reached for the dagger at her belt, a bone blade she had taken from the robber girl's mother. But the Hollow King only laughed. "You cannot kill what is not alive." His cloak burst outward, revealing not a body beneath, but a swarm of black snowflakes. They circled her, biting at her arms and face, whispering secrets into her ears. "He left you. He doesn't want to be saved. He likes the cold." She screamed and swung the blade through the cloud. It caught something solid, and the Hollow King shrieked, collapsing into his throne. He melted into the ice, hissing. Gerda knelt, gasping, her breath finally forming mist. The mirrors around her flickered, and for the first time she saw herself, real, bloodied and broken, but alive. She pressed forward. Room after room unfolded before her, each worse than the last. A chamber filled with frozen children, each one with frost-bitten smiles carved into their faces. Another with paintings that bled black water. Another still where the air sang with a lullaby that made her ears bleed. At last, she reached the heart of the palace. The door was not made of ice, but skin, stretched, pale and trembling. It opened like eyelids. Inside was a single white room. And Kay, he knelt on the floor, building something out of jagged glass. Not snowflakes, letters. Over and over he arranged them in circles. Silence, alone, forget, never. He did not see her. "Kay," she whispered, stepping forward. He paused, as if the word had tried to reach him, then resumed building. "Kay," she said again, louder. "It's me, Gerda." He turned. His face was not cruel, nor was it loving. It was blank, emptied, scraped clean of all emotion. His eyes had gone the colour of glacier water. "That name," he said, and his voice was so fragile it nearly snapped. "That name is distant, something warm." She ran to him, threw her arms around him, and immediately cried out. His body burned with cold. It was like hugging a corpse, left in the snow for days. Her skin stuck to his neck, tearing when she pulled back. "You left me," he said simply. "You were taken. I stayed. You were cursed. I chose this." Gerda's heart cracked like thin ice. "No, no, I don't believe that." He blinked slowly. I saw the world through the Queen's eyes. I saw the truth. Love is noise. Family is weight. Home is a myth. Out here, everything is clean. Everything is still. Everything is dead. He looked down at the letters again. She told me you'd come. She said you'd try to bring disease into the quiet, that you'd scream and sob and try to melt it all away. I didn't believe her at first, but you knew I would come, she whispered. You remembered me. He hesitated. I remembered a song, something small, a tune without words. She took his hand. It was stiff. He didn't pull away. Sing it, he said. So she did. A lullaby her grandmother used to hum while boiling nettles. It was ugly and off-key, but warm, so warm, and she let it crack as she cried, because she knew the mirror shard in his eye would hear it, and it would hurt. He trembled, his lips parted, and then he screamed. The mirror in his eye split in two, a crack forming straight across his iris. Blood spilled from his nose, and he collapsed. The palace shook. The mirrors outside shattered one by one, each with a child's scream embedded in its final note. The spires began to melt, raining cold fire down the halls. The Snow Queen's breath filled the air. She was coming. Gerda pulled Kay up. He was too weak to stand. Come on, she sobbed. We have to go. I can't. You have to. I'm not leaving you. He opened his mouth, and from it came a voice that wasn't his. Stay with me, little Gerda. Let winter have you. Let the warmth die. Let it all stop. She bit her tongue until she tasted blood and screamed, No! She grabbed him, held him tight, and pressed her forehead to his. And then she did something she never thought she would. She pushed the shard in her own eye deeper. It cut through her cheek. It sank into her mind, and she saw, not with her eyes, but with the shard itself, the Snow Queen's sight. She saw every lie, every failure, every time she had doubted Kay, every time she'd wished she hadn't come. She saw the truth, that she was not a saviour, she was a seed, planted long ago, the last warmth in a world the Queen had nearly conquered, and her fire was not hers. It had been waiting for the right moment. Gerda took that fire, that buried sun, and let it burn. The room exploded in light. The frost melted from Kay's skin. The mirrors cracked and wept. The Queen's scream, for the first time, sounded afraid. Gerda pulled Kay into her arms and ran. The sky no longer moved. That was the first thing Gerda noticed. Above her stretched a sheet of motionless clouds, grey, veined with cracks of pale light, like shattered ice. Not even the wind stirred. Time had folded in on itself, trapped inside this strange, frozen cathedral of silence. She stood before a gate of glass, so clear it was nearly invisible, its sharp arches stretching high into a sky that had stopped breathing. Beyond it loomed the Snow Queen's palace, not a castle of grandeur, but something that throbbed with cold intelligence. It looked alive, like it had grown from the very heart of winter. Gerda's lips were blue, her fingers cracked from cold, but something inside her, something hollow and hungry, pushed her forward. She stepped across the threshold. The snow beneath her feet didn't crunch. It made no sound at all, like walking on the bones of forgotten dreams. The palace interior was made entirely of mirror, not smooth mirror, fractured, angular, each surface catching her reflection and twisting it into grotesque shapes. In one panel, she was laughing. In another, she wept blood. In another, her eyes were hollow, and the smile she wore was not hers. She kept moving. Columns of black ice reached into the air like claws, and across the vast chamber's centre spun a slow spiral of shimmering snowflakes, each one sharp as a blade. They floated around a heart-shaped hole in the floor, pulsing with blue light. A figure stood on the other side. "Kay," she whispered. He didn't turn. His back was to her, bare to the cold. His skin had turned pale as alabaster, the tips of his fingers stained blue. He was kneeling before a slab of mirror, arranging shards into a strange sigil, something curved and cruel, like a letter from a forgotten language. "Kay," her voice cracked. "It's me." He turned. His eyes were wrong. Where once they had been soft and curious, now they were hard, like tiny chips of mirror themselves. His lips twisted into something close to a smile, but the corners of his mouth didn't move. "I've seen it," he said. "I see everything now. It's beautiful." Gerda stepped forward, but the snow between them deepened, dragging at her ankles. The room tilted. She stumbled. "You shouldn't have come here," he added. "She won't let you leave. Not now. You're part of it, Gerda. You always were. I came to save you," she whispered. He laughed. It was hollow, like wind through the ribs of a corpse. "Save me? From what? The world out there? That's the lie. This is truth. Look." He held out a shard of mirror. She saw herself, but not as she was. This version of her smiled sweetly, obediently. Her eyes glowed with peace. She was perfect, spotless. She had never doubted, never hurt, never rebelled. The mirror lied. Gerda slapped it from his hand. Kay didn't react. He simply stood and walked toward the heart-shaped pit. "You don't understand. The Snow Queen is showing me everything. The design, the pattern beneath it all. There's no pain here, no guilt, just clarity." Gerda stepped into his path. "This isn't clarity. It's oblivion. You're a puppet." His eyes flickered, just for a second. A ripple passed through his face. "She said you might say that," he murmured. "She told me you'd try to break the mirror." "I'm not here to break it." Gerda's hand trembled as she reached for his. "I'm here to remind you who you are." He looked down at her hand. He didn't take it. Behind them, the floor began to shift. The ice beneath their feet cracked, not in chaos, but in lines, careful and measured, forming a circle. The mirrors around them began to rotate, and from the far end of the room, a sound like a chime, a single crystalline note, rang through the chamber. Then she appeared, the Snow Queen. She glided from the far end of the chamber, as if born from the mirror itself. She wore no crown, no jewels, only a long gown of frost that smoked at the edges like dry ice. Her face was so pale it hurt to look at, and her eyes held no pupils, just endless white. "Child," she said, "you've come so far." Gerda stepped in front of Kay. "Let him go." The Queen tilted her head. "He's not a prisoner. He's home. I see what you've done to him. You twisted his heart, filled him with your ice." The Queen approached slowly. Her feet didn't touch the ground. "I've only removed the pain, the burden, the poison of love and memory. I've given him peace." Gerda's fists clenched. "You've emptied him. You came here for him." The Queen smiled. "But what about you, little Gerda? What have you buried beneath your bravery? What did you really come to find?" The mirrors flared to life. Each one now reflected a memory. Her mother's hands, cold in the coffin, the way no one came to the funeral, the night Kay pulled away from her for the first time and didn't say why, the years spent alone, clinging to stories, to dreams, to lies. Tears stung her eyes. The Snow Queen watched her silently and then gestured. One of the mirrors shattered, and from within stepped a version of Gerda. This one was elegant, poised, beautiful. She wore a crown of ice, and her face was calm. She smiled at Gerda like a mother would to a child throwing a tantrum. "You could be more," the Queen whispered. "You could shed this skin, this pain, this dirt, and become clean, complete." "I don't want to be clean," Gerda said, her voice shaking. "I want to be real." The Snow Queen's eyes narrowed. "So be it." The mirrors began to howl. Wind whipped around them, icy and sharp. The version of Gerda from the mirror opened her mouth and screamed. But it wasn't sound that came out. It was snow, a blizzard, sentient and clawing, rushing at Gerda to consume her. She stood her ground. "I remember," she shouted over the roar. "I remember the smell of Kay's coat in winter, the way he used to draw dragons in the frost. I remember falling and scraping my knees and not crying. I remember fighting to get here." The blizzard hesitated, and Kay blinked. Something inside him shifted. He turned toward Gerda, the snow spinning between them, and he whispered, "Gerda." She reached for him. The blizzard shrieked. The Snow Queen hissed and raised a hand, but Kay moved. With the mirror sigil still in his grip, he hurled it at the Queen's feet. It shattered. The mirrors cracked, all of them. Their twisted reflections screamed in unison, and the wind collapsed in on itself. Gerda ran to Kay, grabbing his face in her hands. His skin was cold, but his eyes were his again. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Just hold on." The Snow Queen staggered back, her mouth bleeding light. "You would choose this," she rasped. "Pain, rot, flesh." Kay held Gerda's hand. "Yes, The palace groaned. A fissure ripped through the floor. Ice melted into steam, and the mirrors began to melt like wax in firelight. The Queen's form flickered. Gerda took one last look at her and then turned away. She and Kay stepped through the collapsing corridor together. The ice tried to reclaim them. The cold clawed at their legs, but they ran, not toward the light, toward life. The ice did not crack under Gerda's feet as she stepped deeper into the chamber of mirrors. It screamed, not with sound, but with memory. Each pane of frost around her was not mere ice, but a living surface of vision and regret. In this cathedral of stillness, silence rang louder than thunder. The air was brittle, scented with sorrow, and thick with something that felt like time itself had been frozen. Mid-weeping, at the centre of the room, Kai sat slumped on a throne of jagged crystal. The throne pulsed faintly with a blue light, as though drawing life from him. His eyes were glassy, not in metaphor, but in truth. Transparent discs of ice glimmered where once had been warmth and wonder. His lips moved soundlessly, repeating a single name over and over, not hers. "Snow Queen," he mouthed. Gerda wanted to scream. She wanted to run to him and shake him from this nightmare, but her limbs were heavy. The mirrors had begun whispering, not aloud, not in words, but with thoughts. "Your fault. You left him. You are the storm." Behind her, the great iron doors she had entered through slammed shut with a finality that made her spine throb. "Welcome back, little Rose," came a voice like velvet dragged through thorns. The Snow Queen emerged, not from a corridor, but from the air itself. She stepped into being, like a shadow deciding to wear skin. She was taller than memory, cloaked in frost and stars, her silver hair dragging across the floor like threads of moonlight dipped in death. Her crown floated above her head, not a symbol of rule, but of imprisonment. Thin, needle-like shards circled her scalp in perfect orbit. "I see you've come far," she said, "but not far enough." Gerda's fist clenched. "I've come for Kai, and what will you give for him?" The Queen's eyes burned pale blue. "Your tears, your warmth, your foolish belief that love is something more than a chemical delusion." Gerda stepped forward. The frost bit into her skin, but she didn't flinch. "You took him. I found him, broken, empty, forgotten. He was never forgotten." The Queen walked a slow circle around her. "Then why was it so easy to peel him from the world? Why did no one come sooner? Why did you wait?" Gerda shook her head. "He's not yours." "No," the Queen whispered. "He's mine now, because he gave himself willingly." And at that moment, Kai rose, not like a puppet, not like a ghost, but like a king reclaiming a crown. His body cracked at the joints as ice slithered beneath his skin. The throne behind him shuddered as it released him, but he didn't fall. He stepped forward with slow, deliberate grace, and he looked at Gerda with no recognition. "Who are you?" he asked. Her heart stuttered. "It's me," she whispered. "It's Gerda. Don't you remember the river? The garden of the woman with the eternal summer? The crows, the prince and princess, the robber girl?" But he only frowned, confused. "I remember. Snow. I remember a voice singing to me in the dark. I remember her." He turned to the queen. "You never lied." The Snow Queen smiled like frostbite. Gerda's breath fogged in the frigid air. "You've replaced him, piece by piece." "No," the queen said. "He replaced himself. Every memory he gave up, I preserved in ice. Would you like to see?" She waved her hand. The mirrors on either side of them began to shimmer. Scenes blossomed from their depths. Kai weeping on a bridge, clutching a broken toy. Kai and Gerda laughing under a spring rain. Hands stained with dandelions. Kai on his knees in the dark, whispering, "Take it away, take it all." Mirror after mirror bloomed with memories, and with each one, Gerda's knees weakened. Kai stared at them, cold and unmoved. "They don't feel like mine. You gave them up," the queen said gently, laying a gloved hand on his shoulder. "You chose peace. No more fear, no more pain. No more love," Gerda said. The queen's expression sharpened. "Love is the cruelest trick of warmth." "No," Gerda said, voice rising. "It's the only thing real." And she stepped toward Kai, but the mirrors began to crack. Each step she took split the floor. The air buzzed with pressure. The queen's fingers twitched, and the chamber groaned. "One more step, and your reflection never leaves this place again," she warned. But Gerda kept walking. Cracks spider-webbed beneath her boots. From above, frost began to fall like powdered glass. Kai did not move. His gaze was fixed, detached. A prince, carved from glacier. Gerda stopped inches from him. "Do you remember the puzzle?" His head twitched. "The one you said you'd finish when the snow came," she said. "The one with the piece you lost under the dresser." Kai blinked. "And I found it when I wasn't supposed to be in your room. We were 8. You cried. You said it meant the world, because it made the heart whole." She reached into her pocket and drew out a shard of something no longer of this world. A puzzle piece, carved from ice, yes, but not by the queen. A real one. The one Gerda had been carrying the whole time, through forests, through madness, through nightmares. Somehow, it had survived everything. She placed it in his palm, and for a moment, silence. Then, a sound, a single crack. It came not from the floor, but from Kai's chest. A jagged fissure ran from his collarbone to his sternum. Light spilled from it, not cold blue, but amber. He stumbled. "No," the Snow Queen whispered. Kai dropped to his knees. The ice in his eyes melted. Tears, real ones, fell and hissed on the frozen floor. "Gerda," he cried. croaked. She collapsed beside him. "You remember everything," he sobbed. "Oh God, everything." The Queen stepped back, face contorted, not in anger, but anguish. "No, no, you gave those things to me. You promised me peace." The mirrors exploded, shards flew like daggers, but none touched Gerda, none touched Kai. The Queen screamed, not in pain, but in betrayal. Her crown shattered, and the stars in her cloak winked out one by one. "I will freeze this world," she shrieked. "I will erase you both." But her voice faltered. The mirrors were gone. The throne was gone. The boy was remembering, and without memory, the Snow Queen was nothing but frost on a window pane. She staggered backward, her skin cracking, lines of molten light seared through her body. She lifted one trembling hand toward Kai. "I only wanted to be loved." Then she was gone. A gust of snow, a sigh of wind, the final silence. Kai fell forward into Gerda's arms. The cold lifted. The ice withdrew from the walls, retreating like a tide. The castle groaned and began to dissolve, piece by piece, into mist. But Gerda held Kai, and this time it was not memory. It was now. It was real. Gerda stood on the edge of the world she had fought so hard to reach, the boundary where winter's endless rain wavered, where ice met earth and the breath of life struggled through the frozen soil. The palace behind her had crumbled into shimmering shards, a ghost of the Snow Queen's power, fading with every crack and melt. Kai was beside her, his hand warm in hers, though the shadows in his eyes betrayed the long nights and bitter cold that still clung to his soul. He was awakening, not just from the Snow Queen's enchantment, but from the very loss of himself. His memories spilled back, fragment by fragment, like fragile crystals, catching the fragile light of dawn. "We've broken her," Gerda whispered, voice raw and breathless, "but the winter still clings." Kai nodded, his gaze distant. Her heart beats beneath the earth, deep in the hollow where the coldest ice lives. "If we don't finish this, the world will freeze again, and this time it will be forever." Before them stretched the landscape of eternal frost and snow, vast and silent. Yet, beneath the white veneer, Gerda felt something stirring, a pulse, faint but real, like the last ember in a dying fire. Together they began their journey anew, stepping off the shattered stones of the palace and into the frozen wilderness. The snow crunched beneath their feet, cold seeping through their boots and biting their skin, but neither faltered. The wind carried whispers, not of ghosts, but of promises. The frozen trees moaned softly, branches shaking as buds struggled beneath brittle bark. Even the sky seemed to lighten, fragile threads of pale gold unravelling the heavy grey. Still, the cold held fast, a choking grip that sought to reclaim every inch of warmth and life. They walked through forests of ice trees, their limbs sharp and glittering like daggers. Each step echoed in the hollow silence, as if the earth itself held its breath. At last they reached a valley, a great hollow carved from stone and ice, its floor a glistening expanse of frozen water. This was the heart of the winter, the throne of the Snow Queen's last dominion. Kai shivered, not from cold, but from the memory of the power that had once lived here, the crushing weight of the Queen's presence that had bent his will and shattered his soul. Gerda squeezed his hand. We finished this together. The first step onto the ice was like crossing a threshold into another world. The air grew denser, each breath a sharp stab of cold that burned the lungs. Shadows writhed beneath the surface of the ice, flickering like trapped souls, desperate for release. The wind rose, howling around them like a chorus of banshees. From the far end of the valley, a figure emerged, tall, regal, and terrible. The Snow Queen herself, reborn from the remnants of her shattered palace, her eyes cold fires that flickered with malice and despair. "You think this ends here?" she hissed. "I am the winter. I am the endless night." Kai stepped forward, his voice steady, despite the fear curling in his chest. "You are nothing but a shadow now." The Snow Queen smiled, cruel and sharp. "And you, a boy lost in frost, grasping for a warmth that was never meant to be yours." The air shimmered, and suddenly the ice beneath them cracked, not in destruction, but in awakening. Gerda felt the pulse of life beneath her feet, the thaw beginning. The battle that followed was not one of swords or spells, but of wills. Light against darkness, hope against despair. The Snow Queen summoned storms of ice and snow, trying to freeze the very air between them. But Gerda's warmth, the fire of her love for Kai, burned bright, melting the ice before it could take hold. Kai fought beside her, drawing strength from memories of summer days, laughter shared and promises made. His eyes regained their light, and with every step forward, the Queen's power waned. The valley trembled as their battle reached its climax. With a final cry, Gerda plunged her hands into the snow, pulling forth a heart of crystal, the Snow Queen's own heart, pulsing with cold light. "You will never break me," the Queen screamed. But Gerda crushed the crystal with a strength born of love and loss. The ice shattered like glass. The Queen's form dissolved into mist, her scream fading into the wind. The world sighed, the snow melted, revealing the earth beneath. Gerda and Kai stood together, the first rays of sun warming their faces. The long winter was over, and in the thawing silence, life began again.